Comes the money.
Here we go. Money talk.
Here comes the money.
Hey, well, good afternoon, good evening, and good night, depending on where you're listening from or watching from. Here's another episode of Here Comes the Money with Peter and Hovig.
Good to be here, Hov.
Pete, don't forget the housekeeping.
Yeah, before we get started, obviously anything we'll go through today is general information only. So don't go ahead and just put it in place. We don't know your situation. We can't see you. We don't know anything about you. So just maybe get some personal advice before you do anything, just to make sure that's actually going to work for you.
Yeah, look, really, really important as far as today's subject goes, because so you want to invest in property, where do you start?
Yeah,
You know?
we get that a lot. And obviously we're here to answer or go through that. And obviously, just tackle the key points that you need to consider.
Yeah, it's a candid approach, and we try and unbox and unpack, these finances and ways and means that you can go about investing, because I think it's a very important thing today. It's not about, wanting to invest. It's the fact that you need to invest, Peter,
Yeah.
because, these days with people living longer and, retirement's being 20 years plus with life expectancies growing beyond 85 years old. It's how do you look after yourself in retirement? Well, let's start earlier, start building wealth
Yep.
outside of your home, which is not an income-producing asset, and using all means at your disposal. And one of those assets is property.
Yeah, and quite a popular one. Common one, I should say.
Yeah.
Because a lot of people, have a better understanding of it. They can see it. They can feel it. Obviously, they know how that works in
Yeah.
terms of rent and stuff.
Safe as houses. And
Yeah,
I
yeah.
often say to people that a property is not the most exciting thing in your portfolio. It's just the safest. It's like the anchor. But where do you start? Peter? I think it always starts with knowing and understanding where you are right now.
Yeah, absolutely.
So-
Obviously, you need to know, your current situation, as we've discussed in previous episodes, your net financial position, so you know what base you're starting from and what you need to work to, and why you're actually doing it, why you're actually starting the investment journey to begin with.
And what does that mean? It's your age, your income, your
Yep.
tax, where you are now, where you want to be.
Correct.
That's pretty much where you are now.
Yep.
Understanding, okay, how much have I got? What's my affordability? Affordability is probably the biggest thing that I tell people before they go and invest in property, to understand their affordability. Because I can tell you, my dad left school in year 3, sold all of his books, very successful guy today. And he said, Hovig, the key and the secret to any investment, there's 2 golden rules. I said, what is it, Dad? He said, well, 1, make sure it costs little or nothing to keep. 2, make sure it doesn't give you a headache. As long as it does that, he said, go and get it, because you might look after it for 1 or 2 years, but then it's going to look after you for the rest of your life. So it's affordability.
Yeah.
And to sit down and say, okay, well, this is what I've got. These are the ingredients, and then establish a budget. That's the first thing you've got to do. So a lot of people go out and have a chat to the first person you go to is normally your mortgage broker,
Yeah.
but I don't think that's the right place to start, Peter. I think it's better to start looking at yourself on a holistic level,
Mhm.
where you can understand not just, I'll refinance my home loan, but I want to, I've taken the step. I've said, okay, I want to invest in property. Where do I start? Well, establish a budget.
Yeah, exactly. I think personally, you need to obviously be familiar with your cash flow and where you're at, and making sure you can afford it. When I say that, I believe that a lot of people, some people can't, but a lot of people can afford it, and they don't even realize, because a lot of times what happens is the more you start to earn, or we've spoken about it before, you have that lifestyle creep where you start spending more than you should be, and then you don't put the money where it should go. You put it where you want to.
Yeah.
Want it to go in rubbish, in just
A key ingredient when you establish a budget is not just how much can I afford, because there's other factors that influence it. I.e., if you look at the actual investment itself, or the investment property, if you're looking at a property, you got to look at what's attached to it, the rental income.
Yeah.
And that impacts how much you can actually afford.
Mm.
So if you're going to go buy a property with a rental yield of 2%,
Yeah.
you're not going to be able to afford that price point if that property's got a 5 or 6% yield. And it's not just the rental yield, but it's also the tax and the lender.
Mm.
Because some lenders actually take into account the negative gearing aspect of it, and some don't. So when you're looking at establishing a budget, it's always good to have, I guess, a professional who's done that before many, many times over and over again, and understands that there's a vast array of different investment opportunities that are out there with different rental incomes, with different tax benefits in different areas, with different growth prospects. And these are all things that impact that budget.
Yeah.
So first thing to do when you're looking at investing in property is understand your budget and your borrowing potential. If I did this or if I did that, and in line with different, different examples of different properties. So once you've done that, then it's also, I think, key to understand how long you have.
Yep.
Because property is not a short-term game.
No, it's not. No.
You know,
Even thinks they can, try and make money in a year or two. You could get lucky, and it's happened before in the last few years, especially. But generally speaking, you need to have that longer term view of probably 7, 10 years. Would you agree?
Yeah, look,
You know?
I mean, Peter, I
As long
often
as possible, really. But
yeah, I often say to people, if you and there's if you're relying on the rental income that's coming out of it, not so much the growth.
Yep.
Yeah, the short term does work because I know what the rental is going to be, but the long term aspect of it, letting that ship sail as long as possible, is obviously the best way to give yourself
Yep.
the best opportunity to succeed. But look, when you're looking at investing in property in general, the leveraging of it is the thing that's going to give you the most benefit.
Yep.
But when you go and borrow money from the bank, you got to make sure. And look, the lenders have policies and responsible lending to make sure that you can pay it back. But you want to make sure that you can sustain that while still enjoying what you're doing today.
yeah,
I.e., you don't want it to be a noose around your neck. And I often say to people, oh, I could find you, a property there, and I'll see you every year for a review. And next year when I see you, I'll say, how's everything going? You go, good. We sold it. We made $100,000.
yeah,
I don't want to hear that because you didn't make $100,000. By the time you pay the agents and the
Tax,
capital gains and
yeah.
the stamp duty on the way in, your $100,000 turned into nothing.
yeah,
So the short term approach and of thinking like that, it doesn't work. The mindset that I want our clients and my clients to be in is always plan for the worst, hope for the best, put your numbers under the pillow so you can sleep at night. And as long as you do that, everything's okay. I'll sleep at night. You'll sleep at night.
yeah,
There won't be any fights in between husband and wife because we have to miss out on a holiday or something like that. Then the investment property shouldn't stop you from doing that.
yeah,
But yeah, the most important thing, once you've established, okay, this is the budget, then we want to see what do we want to achieve by investing in this vehicle. Do we want to achieve the tax benefit? Well, if it does, there's a certain criteria.
Yeah.
If you want to achieve the most growth, there's a certain criteria.
And even with the tax, obviously, your tax is always a secondary benefit. When you invest, you're investing to make money, as you can appreciate.
Yeah.
The other benefits like your tax minimization and all that is just an added thing.
Oh.
You're not doing it for that reason. At the end of the day, if you save tax and make no money, what's the point?
Yeah, you don't want to spend $1 to save
Yeah.
50 cents.
No, exactly right. So you're doing it to make money. The other stuff helps you hold it for longer so you can actually make that money.
Yeah.
Okay. But obviously to do that, you need to make sure you're investing in the right areas. And another thing we haven't touched on yet is making sure you've got sufficient buffers in place.
Yeah.
I think we're big sort of advocates of this sort of stuff.
Yeah.
So just to make sure that you've got that rainy day money there so you don't have to sell in an emergency situation because you've run out of money for some reason. Okay. If you've got the buffer in place, it'll help you sort of cover any unforeseen expenses if they arise, whether it be, employment related or, home related or whatever it might be.
Yeah, just say to yourself, don't say, what if I lose my job? Say, I lost my job. What am I going to do?
Yep.
Well, you're going to come home.
Yep.
You might cry for a bit,
Yeah.
drink a bottle of wine. But the next day, you're going to get up and go look for another job.
Exactly.
In 1 month, 3 months, 6 months, you're going to find another job.
Yeah.
But say to yourself, if I lost my job, what would happen? So if your budget's 700, don't go and invest right to 700. Make sure that, we invest for 650 and have a 50 grand buffer.
Yeah.
Because you know what? It's always good to do that whilst you've got your job.
Yeah.
Because if you did lose your job, you go back to the bank and say, can I have another 50 grand? They'll say, where's your pay slips?
Exactly right.
But whilst you've got your job, you set that up. You don't draw on it. It doesn't cost you anything. You just don't draw on it. And it's always there if you need it. That's the insurance, free insurance policy or rainy day fund. And that's important when establishing that budget.
Exactly.
Very, very important.
And a lot of people will be able to, save up a buffer, but if they can sort of, have that extra sort of equity buffer, if you want to call it, that's also going to be a bonus.
Yeah. Look, don't make the mistake. Also, I always say to people, don't make the mistake of just buying the house next door.
No.
It's not always the best one unless you're in one of those areas that that we concentrate on and shortlist for. We've got an 8 selection criteria, and it's an in-depth, tried and proven approach that we've used for the last 20 years.
Exactly.
And you got to tick every single box. And I often say to people, what's the most important? Capital growth, population growth, vacancy rate, infrastructure, median property price, and they'll pick one, tax effectiveness. Yeah, but I say we're not just there to save tax.
Exactly. Yeah.
Growth's my number one.
Yeah.
But if you don't have the right yield, you'll never live to see the day that it grows.
Correct.
So, and if it's not supported by the right infrastructure, with the right vacancy, with that upward pressure on both growth and rent, i.e. more people than houses in that area,
Yeah.
well, the castle could come tumbling down.
Yeah.
Also look at when you're establishing that budget, if you think the interest rates are 5.5, run your numbers at 6.
Yeah, that's right.
If you well, we know over the last 40 years, property's grown on average at 7.2%.
Yeah.
But run your numbers at 4%.
Yeah, correct.
So you say to yourself, okay, if this property cost me $100 a week to keep, and if it's done properly, it's not going to, but let's say it did, that's $5 grand a year. Over 5 years, it cost me 25 grand.
Yep.
Right? If it at 4% does not go up by more than 25 grand, don't invest in that property.
Yeah.
But if at 4% it's gone up by 150, which a $600,000 property would, then you're in a safe spot. You can turn your back on it. It's like I say to people, property investment is like watching water boil. If you sit there and watch the kettle, it's never going to boil. It takes ages. But if you turn your back on it, before you know it, the kettle's going off.
Yeah.
So that's really the long-term approach and the mindset that I want all of our clients to be in.
Yeah.
But the most important is make sure that it's right for you, because what suits John and Mary next door doesn't suit you.
Yeah, exactly right. And I think you made a good point before about, just not buying the house next door because that's what you know. Because a lot of times, if what you mentioned as well about the yield, if the yield is too low and all of a sudden it's costing you so much money to keep every week or every month, every year, you're not going to hold it for long enough to actually make any money.
Yeah.
And we've seen it before.
Yeah, you need to see the bank as your partner because effective they are. That's your business partner and you're running a business. So, you want to make sure that you can look after the bank, the tenants, the property, the taxman's helping you the right way. So that property next door might not be the one. Definitely, it's actually often not the one to choose. Now, there's a myriad of different types of investments, even in property.
Yeah.
So, we deal with shares, managed funds, ETFs, SMAs, all these things. There's derivatives of these. And there is with property as well.
Yeah, exactly, yeah.
So, you can look at not just when we look at freestanding homes, which I know is always my preference, but, you've got homes, townhouse, apartment, but then you've got different subcategories of those, dual key, duplex, different zoning environments,
Then there's
industrial,
also
commercial,
exactly, yeah.
retail.
Yeah.
So, all of these things are going to be factors that you need to take into account before even deciding what's going to be right for you.
Yeah.
So a lot of people say to me, Hovig, what about commercial property? And, if you've got a budget there of 700 or $1 million, right? You go out and buy the commercial property, which has the old milk bar on the corner as your tenant. And the old milk bar on the corner, he's trying his hardest, but he can't pay the rent 1 month. Oh, I can't pay it this month, the next month. Before you know it, he's behind by 30 grand and you have to shut the doors on the poor guy's business. Well, by the time you get that place rented out again, it's often very difficult.
Yeah. The vacancy risk is much higher on commercial.
So,
you know that.
Yeah, and that's for $1 million commercial investment. Now, I say to people, if you've got $10 million and you can buy the whole row of shops, well, I don't care if the corner's empty for a couple of months because the other ones will carry the till.
Yeah.
So when it comes to commercial property, a lot of people are chasing yields. And I say to them, look, at that budget, if you're at the 700 to million category and you want that yield and growth, well, there's ways you can manufacture that using residential applications, which are a lot safer.
Yeah.
So, you don't jump into that environment if it's not right for you. Don't get too big for your boots before, you can fill them, so to speak. But there is different asset classes for different
I
applications.
think for most people, starting off in residential is probably the more secure or strategic way to do it. That way you get a feel for how it all works.
Yeah.
And then if you want to step into commercial, you can. But again, it comes with its own level of risks and things you need to take into consideration. And biggest one probably is vacancy, especially in that lower price point, because you're not getting your, A-grade national tenants that, are backed and they're going to pay your rent forever.
Yeah.
So you need to take that into consideration.
Absolutely. Look, with regards to residential property, you always have to say to yourself what can go wrong. And there's factors there that,
Of course.
What if it burns down? You got insurance.
Yeah.
What if the interest rate goes up? Don't tell yourself the interest rate's not going to go up. We're in an environment now where we're seeing, hopefully one more rate reduction this year, if not this year, first quarter next year. But we've got unemployment levels now that are sort of jumping up, Pete, but we've also got a booming property market.
Yeah, correct. Yeah.
So, it's kind of like a double-edged sword. If the RBA drops now, that property market's going to get out of control.
Yeah.
So I think now they're at a point where they're sort of umming and ahhing what to do.
It's a bit of a fine line,
It's anybody's guess what happens. But what you do is when you do your numbers, you do it on worst case scenario. Plan for the worst, hope for the best. You also say to yourself, what if the property price goes down?
Yeah, which can happen.
Don't tell yourself the property price isn't going to go down. Say even if it goes down, they're always going to go up again.
Yeah,
because if you look over the last 40 years, they've always gone up over time. People need houses to live in. Like the worst property crash I've seen in my lifetime was LA 2009 GFC. $2 million homes went to $1 billion overnight.
Yeah, wow.
And I was, oh, geez, and I went over there. I looked at these homes. Anyway, I used to go back there every year because my wife's family's from there. I came back 2 years, 3 years later. Those properties were back to $2 million. They'd fully recovered and exceeded their expectation. And I said, damn, why didn't I buy one?
Yeah.
So don't tell yourself the price won't go down. So even if it does go down, it's always going to recover.
Yeah.
The what thing I want to concentrate on is look at my cash flows, control my cash flows. So I know what the rent is. I know what the interest rate is, worst case. That's the ebbs and flows.
Yeah.
And I know I'm in this game for the long term.
And if you invest in an area with the multiple economic drivers, it's going to eventually recover and grow further anyway.
Absolutely.
Simple as
And
that.
infrastructure is the key.
Yeah.
Look, not only existing infrastructure, school, shops, road
Yeah.
transport, but new infrastructure. I spend 95% of my time researching what's planned, what's proposed, what's under construction. Planned and proposed, I throw it out the window
Yeah.
because bureaucrats talk about stuff and never
Yeah,
happens.
Exactly.
So what I love most is under construction or newly completed
Mm.
because that's what brings people. If it's a hospital that just got built, you need your nurses, your doctors, your retail staff, your parking attendants, your security staff. They all need houses to live in.
Mm.
So the minute that infrastructure completes, all these people move into the area and push up the value of their homes.
Yeah.
So yeah, the infrastructure's sustainability, good quality property in good sustainable areas is what you're looking for long-term capital appreciation. And that removes the risk. I think time removes risk.
Yep.
And we always talk about act sooner, act early.
Yeah.
And the important thing is when you can afford to or when you've got the capacity and budget to,
Yep.
get into the right investment. Don't get greedy on growth or yield because that's the opposite, Pete.
Yep.
You can go to areas where you've got a really high rental.
Yeah.
And it's so, you look at it, it's so tempting to go and buy that
I've
asset.
seen it in the past with mining towns and whatnot, and
Yeah.
then all of a sudden when the mines shut down or slow down, and all of a sudden the yield is out the window and the value is through the floor.
Never invest in an area with one economic driver. It's like sitting on a chair with one leg.
Yeah.
Because, it's only got one driver, you fall over. You like that analogy, Pete?
It was impressive.
So, anyways, look, I'm a very pro property guy, but look, I also believe in diversification, Pete.
Of course, yeah, of course.
I also believe that you should have a little bit here, a little bit there, a little bit there.
Spread the risk around.
Spread the risk around, do the right thing. But I think the safest, securest, most flexible approach is doing it the right way.
Yeah.
And not just jumping into any property because.
Exactly.
I mean, I have heard people that do it the wrong way that end up with, they're not happy with it. Or like you said before, they sell it before they get a chance to see the benefit.
Well, we've seen it. And back to that mining example, I think it was many years ago, we had a client come to us and they had bought previously, before they came to us, Gladstone or something like, I can't remember exact area, somewhere in the northern Queensland area. And I think they bought it for like 700,000 on a massive yield promise. And I don't even know if it's worth 300 or 400 now.
Wow.
And I think it's been a number of years, and I don't believe it's still recovered. So that's why it's important to look for those multiple economic drivers.
Yeah.
Not just one.
Yeah. Stay close to population.
Yeah.
People need houses. And those population movements with mines that open and close. But having said that, we've had this philosophy for the last 20 years.
Correct.
And that's why when they said Perth's the best property market in Australia, you read in the paper. I say to people, when you read in the paper, it's too late.
Probably too late, yeah, exactly.
But we don't like investing in investor-driven markets. We try and find
hotspots,
areas
rubbish like that.
Yeah, we try and find areas that. Well, when you read hotspot in the paper, you got to read who wrote the article.
Yeah.
Because if it's
What's
a
their
developer
vested
that wrote it,
exactly right.
he's just trying to sell it.
Vested interest.
But we try and stick to no more than a 35% maximum investor, 70% owner-occupier, preferably. But anyway, once you get in the market as well, there's things that you need to do to make it so it's less headache. Because I don't ever want you to care too much about one investment. If you care too much about one investment, how many investments do you think you're going to have?
Probably one.
Exactly. Or none.
Yeah.
Because there's these little devils on your shoulder you need to get rid of. And you do this by, making sure you've got a proper real estate agent. Don't manage it yourself. I've seen a lot of people try and manage it themselves to save a bit of money. Make sure they've done the background checks, the leases, the bonds, and everything are in place. And give the tenant a reasonable deal. I've seen people go to market, and if the going rate's $650, they go, I want $670. Well, don't do that. Just put it for $620 and get it rented. Get a good tenant. He'll respect the property. He'll respect you, and he'll stay there for longer.
And that's a good point. A lot of people feel like, they're trying to get the maximum rent. And obviously it's important, but keeping in mind, if you're trying to get $700 a week in rent, but it's, you're waiting 3 or 4 weeks to fill it, you probably could have charged $650 or $620, filled it straight away. And when you work it out over a space of a year, you would have lost money by trying to get the higher figure.
Yeah, you've recouped that.
Yeah, you recouped it. Yeah.
And even if you didn't recoup it, the tax man's actually going to go, hey, here you go. Here's a little bit more because you've got a bigger.
And you probably get to that higher figure in the next 12 months anyway.
Yeah, absolutely.
At renewal time.
So I guess the key to where do I start?
Yeah.
It's making sure you got the right team around you.
Yeah, exactly.
And coming back, that's why smart money wealth management exists, right?
And basics, from the basics, if you look at it, understand where your cash flow is at. Basically, make sure you've got your buffers in place. See what your capacity is and how much you can actually spend, and then try and find, I guess, the vehicle that's going to, cost you the least amount to hold.
Yeah.
Give you the best growth that you can. I know it sounds very basic, but I mean, we're trying to make it sound as easy as possible.
Yeah, well, a lot of people say, Hovig, where's the best place to invest? And it's like, okay, let's show me your scenario before I can because I could tell you a million different
Yeah.
places, but they're not exactly the right one for
Exactly
you.
right. Yeah, it's not all. It's not. There's not one spot.
Yeah. But look, over the last 40 years, Pete, I think shares grew faster than property.
They have,
So
but there's a big difference.
forget
isn't there?
property. Let's just invest
You
in.
can. You definitely can. The only difference is the power of leverage.
I always put that
That's
little
it.
L up on the forehead
Suits you.
there.
It suits you.
Leverage.
You can't. If you're listening, you probably can't see what he did, but he put a big L on his forehead.
It's not loser, it's leverage. And it's a shame not to take advantage and leverage because if let's say, Peter, I gave you $100,000 and I gave myself $100,000 and it's 1965. And I said, Pete, you put your $100,000 in the stock market, which grows on average of, what is it? 8, 9, I'll give you 10%.
Call it 10. Just
How about I
round
give you
up. Round
10%?
up, yeah.
And then my property market, I'm going to say not 7, you give me 5%.
Yeah,
Okay.
exactly.
I start with 100, you start with 100. Who's going to win? I'm going to win.
Yeah.
Why? Because I'm going to go to the bank and I'm going to say, Mr. Banker, can you lend me 400? Here's my 100 deposit. I'm going to hold a $500,000 investment, growing at 5% every year, half the amount.
Yeah.
That's 25 grand a year. Whereas you're holding a $100,000 investment at 10%, and you're only getting 10 grand a year.
Starting with a lower base. Exactly right.
The story of compounding.
Yep.
So, that great story of compounding. This is what I explained to my son, Christopher. It's a king. There's a king, and he goes out to his village, and he says, guys, it's been a great year. The crops we've harvested, we're having a great year. I'm going to come. Everyone line up. Tell me what you want. I'm going to gift everyone something in the village. And one guy comes, he says, I want a horse. The other guy says, I want a carriage. The other guy says, I want a tent or whatever he wants. One guy comes, he says, King, and he keeps telling his soldiers, give him what he wants, give him what he wants. And one guy came, he bought a chessboard with him. And he said, King, I only want 1 grain of rice on the first square of this chessboard. On the second square, he said, I want 2 grains. And then 4 grains and 8 grains and 16 and 32 and 64 and 120. And keep going and just double it. Every square, can you please double it, King? The king said, no problem. He said, take you and your chessboard, go see one of the soldiers, they'll look after you. After about 5 minutes, the king got a tap on the soldier on the shoulder from one of his soldiers. He said, King. He said, what is it? Leave me alone. He said, King. He said, what is it? He goes, we just gave away the whole kingdom. Because of the power of compounding.
Correct, yeah.
That villager just took over the whole kingdom because they had to give all the rice they had to that guy because of the power of compounding. Halfway through the board, they ran out of rice.
Yeah.
So
you know what you are, Hovig?
What's
You're the analogy king.
yeah.
That's just that.
So look, it's a very, very powerful concept,
Yes,
and
it is.
it works, but it only works when you start with a larger asset base. And I tell people, 500,000 grows at 10%, it's 50 grand. 100,000 grows at 10% is 10 grand.
Yeah.
So that works part and parcel with different ways and means that we utilize it safely. And I think any asset class, if you look at, you don't really want to leverage too much over a volatile asset.
Yeah.
Because as we know, shares jump up and down. Then, what I say to people is like the share market, the volatility is what I liken it to is like a speedboat. Steering wheel's the market. You touch steering wheel, the boat turns.
Yeah.
It's highly reactive and sensitive to market conditions. Whereas the property market, it's more like a cruise ship. The captain turns the steering wheel, the boat doesn't turn. But when it turns, it stays in that direction. For 3, 4, 5 years, it slows down and goes for another run. It happens like that because of the supply and demand factors that follow.
Yeah.
And it's very easy. Demand, who does it come from? People. Who buys there, lives there, works there, rents there. We know that. And supply is limited. Why? Because the council has to come out, rezone land, the builders have to come.
Developer has to release the land or whatever.
It's a 5-year turnaround, especially in Australia.
Yeah.
Because I know our planning and our councils, Australia-wide, are very, very slow to release or rezone land. I mean, Australia is one of the most beautiful countries in the world, but how much land do we have compared to how much is actually populated is amazing.
Yeah.
I mean, I know areas where I could see a residential zone touching into a rural zone, and that rural zone I know for a fact is not going to get rezoned for 10 years plus.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
So
Everything just takes too long, basically, which is what I think one of the major reasons why we have seen so much property growth.
Yeah.
It's just the lack
land
of
is
supply.
limited. Yep, it
Simple.
is. And that's why we're in probably one of the best countries in the world now, especially with the international socioeconomic environment that we're in, with all the things that are going on around the world. Australia's the safe haven.
Yeah.
So we've got new babies born, we've got immigration, we've got aging population, and we've got the safety and security geopolitically is what I'm trying to say, which gives weight to probably property investment being a good asset.
Just on that, I actually recently, I'm pretty sure the actual RBA governor, she even said that she doesn't see supply being anywhere near catching up in the next 2 to 5 years. I think it's longer than that, but
Wow.
she actually said that
Yeah.
in the media. Yeah.
So there you go. That's my
Yeah.
cruise ship example, and that's why it makes it more predictable. And what we do is we just watch those markets.
Yep.
Do you want to buy at the bottom of the cycle or the top of the cycle? Well, in a perfect world with shares, if I knew where the bottom and the top was, I'd be sitting in my sailboat in the
Yeah,
Bahamas
exactly.
right now.
And nobody really does do that.
But with property, even if I knew the bottom and I could pick the bottom, and we could get damn close to it, but we can't pick it.
No.
But even if I could, I still wouldn't tell you to go buy there.
Mm.
Why? Because it takes 12 to 18 months before you see lead indicators of growth off the bottom of the cycle.
Yeah.
What's better to do is watch that market. That's what we do. Sit there, watch it, see 12 to 18 months of growth, then jump in there.
Yeah.
And that way, what you've done is you've got a tried and proven method of giving yourself sustained capital growth.
Yeah.
But don't get greedy on either growth or yield is the moral of the story, because once you get greedy on one, there's something he's got to give. So you want to just get good sustainable property, good sustainable areas, leave it. Once you've established your budget, understood your time frames, your tax dollars, and there's a lot of ingredients there, but a lot of people have those ingredients under their nose and still do nothing.
Correct, yeah. And sometimes it's fear or not knowing that they can actually do it as well. That's a big factor for a lot of people. People can do a lot more than they think, but sometimes we just don't, because it's easier to do nothing.
Yeah, it's an emotional roller coaster.
Yeah, you can.
And a lot of people, the reason they go through those emotions is the fear of the unknown. I can guarantee it's that.
Yeah.
So if you sit down and go, okay, if I lost my job, I've got the safety buffer. Rent, there's no such thing as not renting. I'll just drop it and I'll rent it. Interest rate, don't say I've already done my numbers at higher rate. Property, don't say it won't go down. It'll go up eventually. So if you tick all those boxes, it makes you feel comfortable and confident. You go, let's put this in place. Because at the end of the day, if you don't do it, it's actually riskier not to do anything.
Yeah, I agree.
If you sit on a 30-year mortgage, end up paying double, and then retire with 400 or 500 grand in your super,
if you're lucky. Yeah.
it's pretty scary.
Exactly right.
For 20 years.
Yeah, exactly.
What's
Not gonna
500
last
grand
for long.
divided by 20 years?
And then you end up on the age pension, and what do we get? We worked it out the other week, 35, 40 grand a year, I think it was.
$700-800 a week. You can't even pay your car, your rego, your rates,
Doing anything
insurance.
too exciting with that level of money. But I think
Anyway,
to summarize,
More exciting stuff.
we keep rambling, going around in circles.
Yeah.
To summarize, basically, understand your cash flow,
Yep.
have a buffer in place, know how much you can expend, maybe speak to a mortgage broker or the bank,
Yep.
or smart money if you like. It's up to you. And take from there, maybe.
Wealthy people become wealthy by buying, not selling. I guarantee every one time someone sells a property, they go, damn, why did I sell it? And every time someone doesn't buy it, they go, damn, why didn't I buy it?
That's true.
So it's always going up. It has been going up. It will keep going up simply because people need houses to live in.
Exactly.
There's another episode. Can we wrap it up now, Peter?
I think we can. I think we've said enough.
Here comes the money. Again, Peter and Hovig. Thanks for
Hov.
coming. Thanks for listening into another episode, guys. We hope we've helped. We hope you've learned something. And we always believe and always thank in everybody that follows us. Like, follow, send us an email if you've got any questions.
Yeah, if you want to hear anything from us, any questions you want answered, just send us an email and we'll try and get them answered on an episode.
Absolutely. Thanks again. Happy investing.
Thanks for listening.
Thanks for listening.